Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, all right, preemptive like, extra credits, let's go. Didn't do great on GeoGuessr this morning. Yeah, the Finland one, I saw I saw Para, Para, how do I, but I saw birch trees and it definitely seemed like the flora, the, the trees and whatnot were more northern environment. But then I could have sworn I saw Spanish, and so I thought, hey, maybe in the mountains in Spain or in between France and Spain, I forget what those are, Pyrenees. No, whatever that mountain range is. Uh, that maybe there are some birch trees there, and that would be Spanish, and so I clicked there. But it turns out that was Finnish. Anyways, if you didn't see that, then you don't know what I'm talking about. Anyways, let's go. I would recommend watching the previous two episodes, either my reaction to them or right from extra credits, but that is up to you. My name's Connor. Hello, my friend. Or future acquaintance, sir or madam. Hello. Rhode Island, New England, USA, in that order. I like learning about history through YouTube videos, and yeah, I'd love for you to join. Hit all the buttons. Original link to the video, top of the description below, right below that. Link to the Discord, right below that. My voice just cracked. Is the link to my second channel, where I do more non-history related things. Let's go. The 1918 flu pandemic. Order more coffins. Yikes. Extra history. Numero trace. Go.
1 month later. Brakes squeal, steam vents. Dr. Welch and his team are pulling into a train station in Washington, D.C., returning from a grueling cross-country inspection of military hospitals. They hope to make their report and get some rest. Instead, a soldier meets them on the platform with new orders. Proceed immediately to Devens. Spanish influenza has struck the camp.
So you guys who are new and maybe are too lazy to watch the previous two episodes, so yeah, the Spanish flu, it didn't really start in Spain. It seems to have even started in America, and it's kind of going everywhere, but it's also during the First World War, which you got to realize at that time, I'm not saying that no one is guilty in suppressing information, but you do have to realize that the biggest event that to these people living has ever happened is happening, which is the Great War. And so if there's ever a time where a pandemic the size of this one is going to be kind of swiped under the rug, I'd say it picked a good time period to do that, to pop up. So yeah, it's going places.
8
Riveting.
hours later, Welch and his team arrive in Massachusetts. They find Camp Devens paralyzed. Patients fill each inch of hospital space, turning blue and coughing so hard they tear their abdominal muscles. They hemorrhage blood from their noses and scream in fevered delirium. In extreme cases, the disease has ripped tiny holes in their lungs. Oxygen leaks out, collecting beneath the victim's skin, so they crackle when nurses roll them over, like the pop-snap sound of rice cereal.
I almost want to be like an animated, but it's like, so I get stomach aches and stuff. Like I've never been hospitalized ever since that first time 28 years ago. But I mean, I hate being sick, and to be this sick must be worse than any sort of wound you can experience, like a gunshot. I think we'd all agree that we'd rather be shot than. It depends where you're shot, actually. This is.
What is happening? All training has stopped. Recruits that aren't sick have been put into service caring for those that are. Nearly half the camp's medical staff is ill. Some didn't even show symptoms, they just collapsed. These sudden onset patients often die within 12 hours. Those that avoid that quick death are falling to secondary pneumonia infections. The Army has arranged special trains to take away the dead, and it's already showing up in Boston. After a marathon session of autopsies revealing lungs full of frothy blood, the team turns to Welch.
Oh, that visual. lungs full of frothy blood.
He's the head of the American Medical Association and has studied rare diseases on 3 continents. Shaken, Welch says, "This must be some kind of new infection or plague." Then he runs out of the room, stepping around sick men to get to a phone. He calls his boss, Army Surgeon General Gorgas. "This is going to spread," he says. "The Army needs to shut down troop movements and expand hospital space now." Then he calls the Rockefeller Institute and orders Dr. Oswald Avery to report to Devens. Avery is a peculiar man. Like Welch, he'd shown no interest in marriage or family, but unlike Welch, who schmoozed at private clubs and vacationed in Atlantic City, Avery had no hobbies or social life. He is a single-minded obsessive who lives in an apartment next to the Institute and talks only about his work. If anybody could find the pathogen responsible, Avery could. But they have so little time. Several things need to happen, Welch reasons. They need to figure out how the disease spreads and how to kill it, and whether they could do anything to stop it. They need to identify the pathogen, the bacteria or toxin that caused this disease, so they could develop a serum, antitoxin, or vaccine. And that was Avery's task. Avery, who had done such good work on the pneumonia serum they'd tested in the summer, which might come in handy given all the secondary pneumonia cases. But Welch and his team weren't...
So we agreed last video, my vaccine definition is pretty good. Like, you're essentially taking a very weakened version of the disease and presenting it to your body's immune system so that it gets a little sick. But so you're guaranteeing a little sickness so that you prevent a big illness that could potentially kill you, right? So you're kind of introducing it to your immune system so that it can recognize it and then will be able to defend against it in the future better, correct?
Only ones hunting for the pathogen. Long Island, New York. The speeding Board of Health car fishtails down the dirt road. Inside it sits the most unusual pair in American medicine. In the passenger seat, hanging on for dear life, is Dr. William Park. Behind the wheel, with her foot firmly on the accelerator, is the lab's assistant director, Dr. Anna Williams. The two seem almost polar opposites. Where Park is religious, Williams doubts. He's a gentleman born to high society, where she prefers driving fast cars and riding shotgun on stunt planes. But in 25 years of collaboration, they've won fame for their work on polio, rabies, and diphtheria, which is why they're speeding towards an army base. If American doctors hope to produce a vaccine or serum to fight this new disease, they need Park and Williams. No one, not even their rivals at Rockefeller, can produce vaccine in the quantities Park can. If they isolate the pathogen, he can inject it into a horse, then draw the blood and extract the equine antibodies. And Park has a lot of horses. It's how they made enough diphtheria antitoxin to supply every doctor in New York free of charge. They park the car, tie on their masks, and get to work. Within hours, they're heading back to the city. The back seat's stuffed full of throat swabs, blood samples, and lung tissue. Both teams are looking for the same thing, Bacillus influenzae. 16 years earlier, the German physician Richard Pfeiffer had identified it as the cause of influenza, a discovery so momentous that the microbe was nicknamed Pfeiffer's bacillus. But Pfeiffer's is difficult to identify and isolate. A tiny error in preparation can ruin the sample, so finding it takes time. Meanwhile, Army epidemiologists are tracking the spread of the disease. They could actually chart it on a map, jumping from base to base along shipping routes and rail lines. Boston, Philadelphia, New York, New Orleans, Puget Sound, the Great Lakes. Sometimes men became so sick in transit that they had to be carried off the ships and trains when they reached their destinations. Their initial investigation suggests it's severe influenza. That means it's airborne and can survive for hours on...
I bet you too, like on a ship, they might not immediately think it because I'm sure they are assuming there are going to be a lot of seasick soldiers on the way over there. And so I wonder if initial sicknesses were seen as just simple seasickness.
Carried off the ships and trains when they...
Initial symptoms.
...reached their destinations. Their initial investigation suggests it's severe influenza. That means it's airborne and can survive for hours on hard surfaces. The large number of secondary infections indicate that it suppresses the immune system. Surgeon General Gorgas tries to raise the alarm. He insists his superiors freeze all transfers and stop the troop ships. At the very least, they could hold the men in quarantine for a week before they board. The military refuses. Germany is on their last legs, they argue. The Austrians and the Ottomans are rumored to be drafting peace offers. This is not the time to let up the pressure. Nothing must distract them or the public from the war effort.
Butterfly.
They send out the next draft registration, forcing thousands of men across the country to crowd into civic buildings to fill out paperwork. Gorgas protests. What is the point of this? The camps have stopped all training to deal with the outbreak. These new draftees wouldn't become fighting men. They'd just report for duty and get flu. Finally, a win. The army agrees and cancels the next draft. But it's too late. As Gorgas battles the generals, unit commanders are already ignoring medical advice. At Camp Grant...
Look, I know, and my immediate reaction is, you idiot generals and stuff, and I think we have to pump the brakes on that. They have a certain job that is life or death as well, you know, which is... And so you can't expect them just to roll over and say, okay, let the Germans take this side, our guys are sick. It's like, no... You have to put men over there. And I don't know the circumstances exactly, but I think we've got to be hesitant to, you know, place all the blame on the people who are trying to hide the virus because of the war effort.
And a doctor sits in the commandant's office.
Obviously now, yeah, in hindsight, it was a bad idea. But I think in the moment, I don't think we can jump to that so easy.
Telling his commander that the overcrowding situation is dangerous. He's ignoring regulations. Too many men in the barracks and on transfer trains. The commandant's answer will seal his fate. In 2 weeks, the doctor will be back in this office, telling him that 500 men are dead. The last troop train they'd sent had turned into a plague train. A quarter of the transfers had to be hospitalized, and the camp had run out of coffins. Upon hearing this, the commandant will order the doctor out of his office, draw his pistol, and take his own life.
Jesus.
But that is 2 weeks from now. At this moment, he says the overcrowding is necessary. This is war, doctor. But as bad as things are in the military, they're worse on the civilian front. The head of the Public Health Service is in denial. He issues a useless notice on how to avoid influenza and collects some statistics, but does nothing more. The military worries that raising public awareness of the flu will damage morale, and he's not a man to stand up to the military. And he's not alone. In Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, people are starting to collapse on the street or fall from horseback. Hacking, shivering patients fill hospitals. Employee absenteeism hikes up, but civic leaders refuse to admit the growing crisis. As Park and Williams race to identify the pathogen, with half their staff ill and some dying, the head of the New York Board of Health, a homeopath with no scientific training, denies there's an epidemic. In Philadelphia, the mayor and his health officials are telling the press that the outbreak is nearly over. They continue doing so day after day as the death toll mounts and hospital wards fill.
It's almost over. It's almost over. Don't worry. It's deaths are increasing. It's almost over. It's almost over.
Buries flu reports in the back pages to preserve wartime morale. After all, panicked citizens don't show up for work at the shipyard. They don't visit their neighborhood Marine recruiter or buy Liberty loans to fund the war effort. And that last one is important.
I swear,
Philadelphia
if people are
is about
yelling or whatever at the screen, being like, you know, full on against the military decisions, I don't think you're thinking about this clearly enough. You can't just ignore the war. I understand I'm being maybe too defensive of the military. Obviously, the guy who ended his own life believed he made a huge mistake. But I think that in the moment, you can't just wipe away all of those considerations. Do you know what I'm saying?
To throw the largest Liberty loan drive in the country. Soon, thousands will march through the city, and hundreds of thousands will turn up to watch and chip in. Doctors urge the mayor to cancel all public gatherings. He refuses. September 27th. There's been progress. Welch and his team at Camp Devens telephone their report to Gorgas. They've found Pfeiffer's bacillus in a majority of the flu cases. Park and Williams confirm the findings in their samples. Now, if they can isolate and grow a sample of Pfeiffer's, they can begin work on a vaccine. But Avery isn't so sure. He'd found Pfeiffer's, but not consistently. In fact, he wonders if something else is responsible. A virus too small to see. If so, they could only hope that when they produced the vaccine, the horse would make antibodies for this virus as well. It was the best they could do. After making his report, Welch boards a train to D.C. It had been a period of exhausting, dangerous work. He feels bone tired and has a headache. The symptoms start to show on the train ride. He switches his ticket and gets a room at his favorite hotel in Atlantic City. He'll remain there, delirious in self-imposed quarantine for weeks. The most respected man in American medicine is out of action, right when the country needs him most, because America was about to run out of coffins.
Imagine, so look at all of the different opinions about COVID policy when we're not in a world war. Now imagine we're in a world war. How hyped up on both sides all of that stuff gets. And people are way more serious. And so I'm trying to kind of put us in that situation. But, I mean, there's no doubt, especially the guy who ended his own life, clearly thought he made a terrible decision. I guess I'd have to learn more about it to see if he's truly responsible or not, and if he should have known better. Yeah, awesome. All right, I will be getting into episode 4 next. I also have to continue the early spread of Islam videos, and I will do that. Awesome. Hope you guys are all doing well. See you guys next time.